Fiber Spider back again in the kitchen with another tasty video for you. Hello, hope all of you are doing really great today. I'm doing fabulous because I'm going to show you a new really awesome recipe. Today we're going to be making an artisan loaf of bread. It's really simple, comes together quickly, and I was very pleased with the results. Now I love sourdough bread. I love the taste, I love the texture, and I think it's fabulous. But you know, you don't always have a couple of days to wait from start to finish to make a loaf of bread. And so I wanted to try to find something, you know, a little bit different, a little bit quicker, and just as tasty. So I did, found something. And it is a no-knead bread. No knead at all. You couldn't even if you wanted to. The dough is extremely wet and sticky, but there's a reason for that, because we also do not require a second rise, so it takes a lot less time. Yeah, I was surprised, but it totally works. And the ingredients, they're very basic: flour, yeast, salt, water, and you don't have to have a Dutch oven, but I would strongly recommend it. You know, you can use alternate methods using a hot water bath, but Dutch oven, it's the way to go. So, that being said, let's get started, shall we? Alrighty. Hello again. Alright, so I've got my ingredients all set to go. Let's start this, shall we? So, a nice big bowl. Going to add 1.5 cups of very warm tap water. You don't want it to be boiling, otherwise you're going to end up killing the yeast, but you know, very warm tap water. 1.5 cups. There we go. And 1 packet of dry active yeast. Okay, I'm going to give a quick mix. All right, and to that we're going to add 3 cups of all-purpose flour. Now you could use bread flour. However, I use all-purpose for just about everything, and this totally worked, so I'm going to use all-purpose. That's 1. That's 2. And that's 3. Now you may need a little bit more because we're going based on cups and not based off of weight or grams. So probably going to need a little bit more, because with this dough it is about consistency and texture. So we got that going on. Now to that, going to add 1 teaspoon of kosher salt. And where is my teaspoon? It was around here somewhere. I literally just had it. Oh, there it is. All right, 1 teaspoon kosher salt coming up. And voila, that's it. That's all we need. All right, now I'm gonna give this a nice mix. Now, the first thing that you're gonna notice is that this is going to be extremely wet. That is to be expected, actually. And you may be inclined to add so much flour to it that you can knead the dough. You do not want to do that, no. You do want this to be a very wet dough. Now, the first time I made this, I needed to add a little bit of flour because it felt like it was more liquidy. This, it's definitely not liquid. You don't want it to be as thin as, say, pancake batter, but you don't want it to be super duper thick where you could in fact knead it. See, this I think is actually not bad. I might add a little bit of flour, but I think it's actually pretty good. I'm just going to add a squidge, a little squidgy. And just make sure everything is nice and combined. Now, this next step, it's, not like crucial or anything, but it's what I prefer to do. So I'm going to actually transfer this to a smaller bowl because this one's easier to cover. And actually, I'm going to use my bench scraper. So bear with me while I do this. Yeah, as you can see, it is super duper sticky. And just make sure you get all the goodies out of here. All right. Okie dokie. And that, believe it or not, is that. Very, very sticky. I know I can't stop saying this, but yeah, so we are going to cover this, leave it on the counter for approximately 2, maybe even 3 hours, all things, depending as far as the temperature in here at the moment. But yeah, let this rise for about 2 hours, and I'm going to cover it with some saran wrap. And after, we can get started with the actual baking of the bread. All right, so I will see you in just a bit. Hello again. All right, so my dough has been sitting out and it has been on the rise for about an hour and a half already. And I want to just show you where we're currently at. Still have about another half an hour to go, but here is what we have. It is very jiggly. The surface is extremely bubbly, and this is exactly what we want. So I'm going to wrap this up again because I'm going to let it sit for about another half an hour. Now, in the remaining half an hour, I'm going to take my Dutch oven, pop it in the oven, and we're going to preheat with this in the oven at 450. And so this thing is going to be super duper duper hot when we're ready to actually pop it in the oven. The dough, that is. So and by the time my oven has completely preheated to 450, we will be ready with our dough and we can actually bake this sucker. I'm excited. I hope you're excited because I love this. All right, so I will see you in about another half an hour, or for you, a couple more seconds. I'll see you in a bit. hello again. All right, so the oven is done preheating and we are all set to go. Now I just need to grab a little bit of flour so that this does not completely stick to my countertop. It will, but you know, par for the course. A little bit of flour. Okay, so there we are. So as you can see, the surface is extremely bubbly and it's also very, very jiggly. And also, if you don't have a bench scraper, I would seriously recommend them because they are fabulous if you plan on doing any sort of, dough bread baking. Very, very useful tool. So I'm going to start by sprinkling our work surface just a bit. There we are. And then get all this doughy goodness out onto the counter. And there we are. Now, because this is really sticky and it's very wet, you really can't knead it. However, we can scrape it into sort of a loaf shape. Also, I have a piece of parchment paper ready to go. So, just sort of folding it over. Also, if the dough is sticking a little too much, you can always add some flour onto your bench scraper. All right, now we're just sort of folding it over. Now, this does not have to be perfect. It does not have to be pretty. Trust me. Just trying to create a little bit of surface tension on the underside. Okay. Now, transferring it from the counter to the parchment paper. It's going to be a little bit tricky, but we'll manage. So I'm going to flour up my hands just a little bit, because invariably I'm going to need to use them. Okay. And we're going to do the best we can. There we go, that's not too bad. Give it a little scooch. And we are, oops, we are essentially good to go. Now for the dangerous part. First, let me wash my hands real quick. Okay, now, what I mean by the dangerous part is we have to take the Dutch oven out and it is going to be super duper duper hot, so we need to be careful. Let me just scrape this to the side here, get you out of the way. Okay. Hot mat. Nice protective gloves. And actually I need another hot mat for the lid. Okay, let's do the doing. All right, so yes, obviously be very, very careful when handling your Dutch oven. Remove the lid. And I'm just going to grab this. You want to make sure that you have enough parchment paper so you can lower this in. Okay. Now it's totally fine if the parchment paper is hanging over the edge. Totally fine. In fact, that'll help you get the bread out later. Pop the lid back on. Back into the oven. Okay, and set your timer for about 30 minutes. Okay. You know, and the one thing that you want to be very, very, very careful of, which I almost did twice during that just now, is going for the lid without your gloves on. Very important to be mindful of what you are doing. Otherwise, yes, accidents can happen. So you want to be quick enough so that the Dutch oven doesn't cool down and you don't lose too much heat, but you want to be careful. Otherwise, you're going to spend more time in the emergency room, and we want to avoid that. So, as I said, it's going to be in the oven covered for about a half an hour, and then after a half an hour, we're then going to take the lid off and continue to bake for about another 12 minutes. Now, the reason why this works so well is because since the dough is extremely wet, extremely moist, and it is enclosed, it's steaming itself. It's giving itself a little steam bath, and that is going to do a lot more of the rising that we're going to need. And then when we take the lid off, that's going to give us the crispy browning of the crust. It's going to be gorgeous. So I will see you in about a half an hour, and we will go from there. I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so it has been 30 minutes, and now for the lid removal. Again, gloves, they're a good thing. Oh, this is heavy. Oh. Okay, so get the lid off. Ooh, this looks nice. Very nice. Okay, but we're going to give it a little more color. It's a little bit pale at the moment. So, going to pop this back into the oven at the same temperature for another 12 minutes. Okay. All right, got my timer set. And in another 12 minutes, we'll pop it out and we shall see the final results. Now, during this 12 minutes, it's approximately, you want to keep an eye on it so that it does not burn, but you do want to get some of that nice golden coloration in there. So I'm going to keep an eye on my bread and I will see you in just a bit. Alrighty. All right, so I've been watching my bread and it's been about 10 minutes, about 2 minutes left on the timer, but I think we are good to go. So let's get it on out and see what we got. Oh yeah. And da-da-da-da, an absolutely gorgeous loaf of artisan bread. So, going to take this out, put it onto a cooling rack, and going to let it get down to room temperature. As tempting as it is to dive right into this while it's still hot, you do want to let it cool down. Otherwise, when you cut it, the steam that escapes makes the bread rather gummy. So you want to let this completely cool down. I know patience is a virtue. Let's be virtuous here and wait for this to cool down, and then we can do the taste test. So I'm gonna let that do that, and I will see you in just a bit. Alrighty. Hello again. All right, so my bread has cooled, it is sliced, and it is ready to go. It is gorgeous. And I will say this, the crust, it is very, very crispy and crunchy, and the interior is nice and soft, and it also has some decent aeration as far as the bubbles are concerned. I need some butter. I definitely need to add some butter to this. Now, I believe, if you used a bread flour, the air bubbles would be more pronounced and numerous. That is my impression, because the structure will hold up better as far as the protein and so forth, because bread flour has more protein in it than all-purpose. All right, time to dive in. Oh, I've been looking forward to this all afternoon. Bon appetit. Oh. Mm. 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 Amazing. Mm. Now, what strikes me is how with just a few simple ingredients, you can make something this delicious. Now, quite a while back, I did a video on how to make a basic loaf of bread with dry active yeast. And that one was good, don't get me wrong. This one I think is even better. And the funny thing is that there's even less ingredients in it. In that one, I believe there was sugar and there was an egg, and it wasn't a bad recipe, but this, it's quicker, it's easier, it's tastier, and I think it looks even better. And also, it doesn't really need like an egg wash on top, and that's because of the steaming and secondary bake using the Dutch oven. And I'm sorry if you'll excuse me for just 1 minute. Mm, mm. Mm. So good, love it. And the first loaf that I had made of this, I polished it off in about 2 days by myself, no problem. I mean, this is approximately half of a loaf, so it's not tremendously big, but it's definitely very satisfying. And I think that it will be a nice addition to my repertoire as far as all things bready and glutinous and carb ridden. I love bread, what can I say? So, that being said, I hope that you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please give a little thumbs up button down below, because you know that I appreciate your appreciation as always. And as always, the ingredients will be in the description box, of course. Now, another thing before we head out, another thing that you can conceivably do, I haven't tried it yet because I only just recently discovered this little marvel. Another thing that you can do is after the initial rise, after the 2 hours and it doubles in size, you can then pop that into the fridge, covered, of course. Pop it into the fridge, and apparently you can keep it in the fridge for up to like 2-3 days. And then when you're ready to do the baking, let it come out of the fridge, let it get up to room temperature for about 45 minutes to an hour or so. Then do the sort of folding on the countertop, transfer it onto the parchment paper, pop it in the Dutch, and you are good to go. Now, apparently, that process, it builds flavor due to a sort of slow second ferment that goes on in the fridge. I haven't tried it, but you could try that. That is actually very similar to what I do with the sourdough, because quite often what I'll do is I will let it do the rise, then I will form it into a bowl, pop it into a loaf pan, and keep that covered for 2 days in the fridge. And then when I'm ready to bake it, take it out of the fridge and I just pop it right into the oven with a second loaf pan on top, and boom, we're good. So this is nice. It's quick. It's easy. It's very tasty. I don't know. I like it. So, as always, I hope that you enjoyed the video, and if there are some recipes that you'd like to see on the channel, let me know. Maybe we can make it happen. And as always, until next time, I want all of you to stay inspired, stay caffeinated, stay making fun, fabulous, tasty treats in the kitchen for yourself or for somebody you love. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I will see you in my next video. Bye for now, everybody, and have a great day.